Suspended ceiling systems can indeed be used to support tukes for lay-in fixtures as the sole support without an independent support. This is permitted by Section 410.16c2 of the 2005 National Electrical Code, often referred to as the NEC. This specific section addresses the requirements for supporting lighting fixtures, and crucially, it makes an allowance for lay-in lighting fixtures. The key phrase within 410.16c2 is that lay-in lighting fixtures having no exposed wiring shall not be required to have independent support. This means that if a tukes for lay-in fixture is designed in such a way that it has no exposed wiring, the suspended ceiling system itself can serve as the only means of support for the fixture, without needing any additional or independent support mechanisms. It is important to understand the definition of a lay-in fixture in this context. A lay-in fixture is one that is designed to be placed directly into the grid of a suspended ceiling system. These fixtures are typically rectangular in shape, often 2 feet by 4 feet or 2 feet by 2 feet, and they are designed to simply rest within the grid, with the edges of the fixture supported by the ceiling grid itself. The absence of exposed wiring is a critical factor in determining whether or not independent support is required. Exposed wiring refers to any electrical conductors or connections that are not enclosed within a protective housing or raceway. If the lay-in fixture has any wiring that is visible or accessible without removing the fixture or opening an enclosure, then it would likely be considered to have exposed wiring. In such a case, independent support would be required, regardless of the fact that it is a lay-in fixture. Independent support typically involves the use of wires, chains, or other support mechanisms that are attached to the building structure above the suspended ceiling. These supports provide additional strength and stability to ensure that the fixture does not fall or become dislodged from the ceiling grid. Now, to clarify the application of Section 314.23d of the National Electrical Code, it is crucial to understand that this section does not apply to the scenario of lay-in fixtures that are supported directly by the suspended ceiling system. Section 314.23d specifically addresses the requirements for lighting fixtures that are mounted on or recessed in suspended ceilings. This means that it applies to fixtures that are attached to the ceiling grid or that are installed within the ceiling cavity, but it does not apply to fixtures that are simply resting on the ceiling grid as their primary means of support. The key distinction here is the method of support. If the fixture is mounted on or recessed in the ceiling, it is subject to the requirements of 314.23d. But if the fixture is supported directly by the ceiling grid as a lay-in fixture, then 410.16c2 applies instead. To further elaborate on the requirements of 314.23d, it generally requires that lighting fixtures that are mounted on or recessed in suspended ceilings must be independently supported from the building structure. This means that even if the fixture is attached to the ceiling grid, it must also have additional support wires or chains that are connected to the structure above the ceiling. This is to ensure that the fixture remains securely in place even if the ceiling grid were to fail or be damaged. Therefore, in the case of tukes for lay-in fixtures that have no exposed wiring, they can indeed be supported by suspended ceilings without an independent support. This is because 410.16c2 specifically allows for this type of installation, as long as the fixtures meet the criteria of being lay-in fixtures with no exposed wiring. However, it is important to carefully inspect the fixtures and the wiring connections to ensure that there is no exposed wiring present. If there is any exposed wiring, then independent support would be required, regardless of the fact that it is a lay-in fixture. It's also important to ensure that the suspended ceiling system itself is rated and installed to support the weight of the fixtures. The ceiling grid and the supporting wires must be strong enough to handle the combined weight of the fixtures and any other equipment that is attached to the ceiling. Consulting with a qualified electrical contractor or engineer is always recommended to ensure that the installation meets all applicable codes and standards. In summary, tukes for lay-in fixtures can be supported by suspended ceilings without independent support, provided they have no exposed wiring and the ceiling system is rated to support the weight. Section 410.16c2 of the National Electrical Code allows for this type of installation, while 314.23d does not apply to fixtures that are supported directly by the ceiling grid as lay-in fixtures. Always consult with a qualified professional to ensure code compliance and safe installation practices. The exception for lay-in fixtures in 410.16c2 acknowledges the design and function of these fixtures. Lay-in fixtures are specifically made to be supported by the ceiling grid. Their weight is distributed across the grid, and their design minimizes the risk of them falling out or causing damage to the ceiling. However, the absence of exposed wiring is crucial because exposed wiring can pose a safety hazard. If the wiring is exposed, it could be easily damaged or disconnected, which could lead to electrical shocks or fires. Therefore, the code requires independent support for fixtures with exposed wiring to ensure that the wiring remains secure and protected. When installing lay-in fixtures, it's important to follow the manufacturer's instructions carefully. The instructions will provide specific details on how to install the fixtures properly and how to ensure that they are securely supported by the ceiling grid. It's also important to inspect the ceiling grid to make sure that it is in good condition and that it is capable of supporting the weight of the fixtures. If the ceiling grid is damaged or weak, it should be repaired or replaced before installing the fixtures. Furthermore, it's crucial to use the correct type of fasteners and connectors when installing the fixtures. Using the wrong type of fasteners could damage the ceiling grid or the fixtures, and it could also compromise the safety of the installation. When making electrical connections, it's important to follow all applicable codes and standards. This includes using the correct size and type of wire, properly grounding the fixtures, and ensuring that all connections are tight and secure. Improper electrical connections can lead to electrical shocks, fires, and other hazards. Another important consideration is the type of ceiling grid that is being used. There are different types of ceiling grids available, and some are stronger and more durable than others. If you are installing heavy fixtures or fixtures with exposed wiring, it's important to use a ceiling grid that is designed to support the weight and the electrical connections. Additionally, it's important to consider the environment in which the fixtures are being installed. If the fixtures are being installed in a damp or corrosive environment, it's important to use fixtures that are rated for that type of environment. This will help to protect the fixtures from damage and ensure that they continue to operate safely. Finally, it's always a good idea to have a qualified electrical inspector review the installation before it is put into service. An electrical inspector can identify any potential problems and ensure that the installation meets all applicable codes and standards. In addition to the specific requirements of 410.16c2 and 314.23d, there are other sections of the National Electrical Code that may be relevant to the installation of lay-in fixtures. For example, Section 300.11 addresses the requirements for securing and supporting wiring. This section requires that all wiring be securely fastened to the building structure or to a suitable support. This means that even if the lay-in fixtures themselves do not require independent support, the wiring that supplies power to the fixtures must be properly supported. Another relevant section is 314.16, which covers the requirements for box fill. This section specifies the maximum number of conductors that can be installed in an electrical box. When installing lay-in fixtures, it's important to make sure that the electrical boxes that are used to make the wiring connections are not overfilled. Overfilled electrical boxes can overheat and cause fires. Furthermore, Section 410.10 addresses the requirements for grounding lighting fixtures. This section requires that all lighting fixtures be properly grounded to protect against electrical shocks. When installing lay-in fixtures, it's important to make sure that the fixtures are properly grounded in accordance with the requirements of 410.10. Another important consideration is the type of lamps that are being used in the lay-in fixtures. Some lamps, such as fluorescent lamps, contain mercury, which is a hazardous material. If these lamps are broken, the mercury can be released into the environment. Therefore, it's important to handle and dispose of these lamps properly. Many jurisdictions have specific regulations regarding the disposal of mercury-containing lamps. In addition to the National Electrical Code, there may be other codes and standards that apply to the installation of lay-in fixtures. For example, the International Building Code (IBC) may have requirements regarding the structural support of suspended ceilings. It's important to consult with a qualified building inspector to determine which codes and standards apply to your specific installation. When planning a lighting installation that involves lay-in fixtures, it's important to consider the overall lighting design. The lighting design should take into account the size and shape of the space, the type of activities that will be performed in the space, and the desired level of illumination. A well-designed lighting system can improve visibility, enhance productivity, and create a more comfortable and inviting environment. There are many different types of lay-in fixtures available, each with its own unique features and benefits. Some lay-in fixtures are designed to provide direct lighting, while others are designed to provide indirect lighting. Direct lighting fixtures emit light directly downward, while indirect lighting fixtures emit light upward, which is then reflected off the ceiling. Indirect lighting can create a more diffuse and even illumination, which can be more comfortable for the eyes. Some lay-in fixtures also have dimming capabilities, which allows you to adjust the level of illumination to suit your needs. Dimming can be useful for creating different moods or for saving energy. When choosing lay-in fixtures, it's important to consider the energy efficiency of the fixtures. Energy-efficient fixtures use less electricity to produce the same amount of light, which can save you money on your energy bills. Look for fixtures that are labeled with the Energy Star logo. Energy Star fixtures have been tested and certified to meet strict energy efficiency standards. In addition to energy efficiency, it's also important to consider the color rendering index (CRI) of the fixtures. The CRI is a measure of how accurately the fixtures render colors. A high CRI means that the fixtures will render colors more accurately, while a low CRI means that the fixtures will render colors less accurately. For most applications, a CRI of 80 or higher is recommended. When installing lay-in fixtures, it's important to follow all safety precautions. Always turn off the power to the circuit before working on any electrical wiring. Wear safety glasses to protect your eyes from debris. Use insulated tools to prevent electrical shocks. If you are not comfortable working with electrical wiring, it's best to hire a qualified electrician to do the work. In conclusion, understanding the nuances of the National Electrical Code is crucial for safe and compliant electrical installations. Specifically, for Fixtures for lay-in fixtures and suspended ceilings, Section 410.16c2 provides the allowance for supporting these fixtures directly from the ceiling grid, as long as there is no exposed wiring. However, it is always recommended to consult the latest edition of the National Electrical Code and seek guidance from qualified professionals to ensure compliance with all applicable codes and standards.